Hi, and welcome back to Catholic Chat. My name is Robbie Spengler, and we are trying to bring Catholicism back into the conversation. Today we wanted to talk about covenants in the Bible. They exist all throughout the Old Testament and as well as the New Testament, and so we wanted to address what are covenants and sort of when you look at the Bible holistically, how do they show for us how the church is being established, how the Lord is establishing His church. And so a covenant is a contract between God and man. So God says, hey, if you guys do these things, if you honor me in these ways, then in return I will give you these graces, or I will give you this or that. And they exist all throughout the Bible. And the very first covenant is the covenant of marriage. It's Adam and Eve. You can see that in Genesis and in Malachi, where it states that this is a covenant that was formed between them. And so that covenant is something that cannot be broken. Imagine that you have a contract with God and you decide to break that contract with God. You see plenty of examples in the Bible where that does not go well for the people that break the contract. And so in this covenant, the condition that had to be met was that they were not to eat from the tree of life or knowledge in the center of the garden, or death would come into this world. They would experience death. And so that's a pretty big result of not following through with your covenant with the Lord. And then with each covenant, you'll see that there's also a sign that we as the people are supposed to do in return, so that the Lord knows, hey, we're still following your covenant. We still want to be your children. And so the very first sign that we have is that we were told to keep holy the Sabbath day. And so that is our sign back to the Lord that, hey, we're still with you, we're still participating. So Adam and Eve are one holy couple. And then after that, we actually expand out to one holy family with Noah and Noah's Ark. And so we all know the story. Noah built the ark, the flood occurred, and then they were saved. And the Lord said that as long as you keep my covenant, this new covenant that we have together, I will never do such a flood again. I will never have a flood that destroys the world. And the sign of that covenant is the rainbow. So every time you see a rainbow, you can remember the covenant that we have with the Lord. And so the condition, though, for this one, and I thought that was interesting, is the covenant is to not drink the blood of animals. And I was a little confused by that at first, and I was like, well, that doesn't even make sense. That's not a common thing. I don't know why we're doing that. Why would he have to even state something like that? But what you can see is even back in the time of Noah, he was setting up for what is to come when Jesus comes again. And we can touch on that later, but essentially, by saying we are not to drink the blood of any animals, it now makes the one time in the New Covenant, in the New Testament, when Jesus says to drink his blood, it becomes a unique sacrifice given to us, because we knew up until this point that was something that was not allowed. And now, only under that circumstance is it allowed. So I think there's a really cool thing to see that God was already laying the groundwork back at the time of Noah for what is to come in the future. So that was one holy family. And then we continue to grow into one holy tribe with Abraham and the covenant with Abraham. And so with Abraham, what God asked of him was that he and all of his future generations get circumcised. And that was their mark. That was their way of saying, hey, Lord, we are your people. And so as long as they did that, the Lord promised that Abraham, who he then named Abram, would have become a great nation, would be given lots of land, and would also be given the seed of future generations. And so as long as he followed through on the commitment of circumcision, then his nation would continue to grow. And so that's what it comes next. So what comes next is, instead of one holy couple and then one holy family and then one holy tribe, we now have one holy nation in the Mosaic covenant, so the covenant with Moses. And so that covenant was, the conditions are, we must follow the Lord's commandments. Remember, Moses gave us the 10 Commandments. And so that is our obligation, is to keep holy the Sabbath. It is to circumcise ourselves, and it is also to follow the commandments. And the sign that we are good, children of God and doing these things was that we would participate in the Passover. And so we would remember when we took the blood of the lamb and put it over our doorway to keep our firstborn safe, that was our sign to the Lord that we are with you, that we want to be called your children. And he required of us as a covenant to continue that process, to continue Passover. And so that is our one holy nation, which can be found in the book of Exodus. So then the last one in the Old Testament is now the Davidic covenant. This is the covenant with David. And what happens with this one is essentially we are becoming, instead of one holy nation, we are becoming one holy kingdom. And the Lord said, you guys are traveling, we're traveling so much, we're moving everywhere as tribes. I want us to have a place where we can come to worship. And so that is, and the sign that we have for this is the building of Solomon's temple. And so the Davidic covenant says that build this temple, and you will have a place that you can come to worship the Lord and not have to be wandering throughout the world as tribes, but we can come together as a kingdom. And so all of these things keep expanding the Lord's church. And then the only time Jesus mentions the word covenant is when he is speaking about receiving the body and blood of Christ, and to do this as the covenant that he's establishing with his people. And that is taking us from one holy kingdom into one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. So it's really beautiful. The condition now is that we must believe in Jesus, we must be baptized, we must eat his flesh and drink his blood, and we must be good living Christians. Those are the new conditions that were set forth in the new covenant. And then the sign to the Lord that we're participating in this covenant is the Eucharist on a daily or weekly basis, to receive the Lord, which is the new covenant that he established with us. And I just think it's really great because I like to put a lot of weight into the words that Jesus actually said. And this is one instance where Jesus actually uses the word covenant in reference to receiving his blood, which is something that back when the Lord was talking with Noah, said this is not something that you are ever allowed to do. And it was so that when we received the Lord's blood, it is a unique experience for all of us. And so that's sort of where I wanted to make this be hopefully a quicker video and sort of touch on all these points. We can delve into deeper topics later. If you have any questions or comments, reach out to us on our website at catholicchat.org or comment below. But I hope that you found this to be informative, and I look forward to talking to you guys next time. Thanks.